Welcome to The Real Pro-Choice, where you will hear stories of miraculous healings and restoration. Sometimes pain doesn't surface until God draws it out to bring healing. You're going to want to hear what my next guest has to say.
The choices we make affect our lives. Sometimes our choices not only affect our own lives, but everyone connected to us. Maybe even those we're not aware of. God says, choose life, so that you and your descendants may live. Join Donna Grisham and her guests as they share the choices they've made and how Jesus has set them free. Next on The Real Pro-Choice.
Welcome to the show today. Today I have my dear friend Lila Shaw. Welcome, Lila.
It's so nice to be here. It's an honor.
You know, it's funny. We have a story in itself of how we met.
Yes, we do.
And you want to tell that story about how, you met me and then how everything...
Yeah. It's actually so funny just to be here and think about it, because a little over a year ago, I was in this studio with a friend of mine who was being interviewed for another show, and you were the I don't know your job.
The guest coordinator.
Yeah, the guest coordinator at the time, and you were helping her, and you and I got to talking, and you walked away, and I asked the makeup artist, who is this woman? There's just something about you that I felt very connected to you. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, she just wrote a book, you should ask her about it. And so I asked you about it, and we just connected. You shared your testimony. It was
really a divine connection that God connected you and everything. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I am a mother of 3. I have a daughter who's 29. I have a 23-year-old son, or 24, and a 19-year-old daughter, and I have 4 grandchildren.
Wow.
And I am living in Phoenix, Arizona, and where I do real estate.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your story. I know that if you want to start at age 15.
Okay, so we moved a lot, and at the age of 9, we moved to California, and at age 15, I started seeing a boy, kind of had a rough thing, a lot of unrest in my childhood, a lot of moving, a lot of things that led up to this place, and so me and this boy began to see each other, and I became pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I remember, because my birthday was in September, and I started, so my 16th birthday, I was in 10th grade, and I went to school. It was the first day of school that year, and it was my 16th birthday, and I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And
so what happened?
So things were crazy, but I never thought anything too much of it, really. I just was excited to have a baby, and even though I was very nervous, and there was talk, different things of what people might want me to do, but I never had a second guess. I wanted to have my baby, and so that's what I did.
So you had the child at 15?
16.
16. Mm-hmm. You're 16 years old, and you have a child, and then you go on through life, and something happens at the age of 19.
That's right. So there was some, turns and just a lot of things that I went to that led up to the age of 19. But one thing, when I, having a baby so young, people said I would never be anyone, a lot of things that people say that aren't very nice, and they can really shape your thoughts and opinions of yourself. Right. And you can tend to believe people, because after all, they're older than you. And so people would said that I would never be anything, so I made sure that I really wanted to go to school. So at the age of 19, I was going to school in nursing, and my mom really had to help me with my daughter, and I worked on the weekends as well. So we kind of were juggling that as a single mom. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I got the news that I was pregnant yet again at the age of 19, and that was when everything kind of just started swirling around even more.
Things started happening, and your mother was keeping your daughter, and you were still struggling in life, and what happened?
So when I get pregnant, I get very sick. So I get morning sickness pretty bad, and I was very worried because I wasn't able to go to work, and I was struggling to make it to school. And I had already told people I was pregnant. I had no, I wasn't thinking of any other thing. I was obviously nervous. I didn't know how I was going to make it, but for me, abortion was not an option. But being so sick, I began to miss school, I began to miss work, and everybody that I told I was pregnant to said, well, you just need to have an abortion. And they would look at me really with disgust, being a 19-year-old girl with one daughter from one father and now another child from somebody else. And it really, I began to notice that people reacted very negatively anytime I tried to talk to them.
So what happened whenever you got these? You have people that are giving you their suggestions or what are telling you what they think you should do, and yet you're wanting inside you're wanting to keep your baby. You're wanting and you don't want an abortion. That was your you didn't want to go through an abortion.
No.
Well, what happened? Did you have the second baby?
I did not.
Okay, tell us that story.
So a lot of different things were happening at the time, but I went to my teacher and she said, you just need to have an abortion. I said, I don't want an abortion. She said, well, you're probably gonna have to drop out of school then, and then what are you gonna do? And then I remember I didn't really have a lot of friends at the time, being in my age group. And I had talked to the father. The father of the baby was irate that I was pregnant and going to keep the baby, and even told me he would take the baby to Mexico and I'd never see the baby again. He just really tried to pressure me into an abortion. So I tried to lie to him and say that I was going to get, because he harassed me, really. I tried to lie and say I was going to get an abortion, but I didn't plan on going through with it. But to make a very long story short, he decided to drive me to the abortion clinic. And I remember I didn't know the address, and I purposely didn't look it up, and so we got lost, and we got in a big argument. But needless to say, we found it an hour late, and he dropped me off at the abortion clinic and drove away.
And you went into the abortion clinic, and he left you by yourself there, and I mean. And from what I understand, he was driving your car. So
he was in my car, yes.
He took your car, left you at the abortion clinic. What did you do? Did you go in or did you stay out? What?
Well, I went in, and I remember that they took me in somewhere to, I don't remember all the details, it's kind of blurry a little bit, but I do remember that I began to tell them that I had an appointment for an abortion, but that I did not want it, but I didn't know what to do, and I was really scared. And that I felt like I was being forced. Even though I had a choice, I felt like I was being forced. And I remember when I told them that, it was like they didn't even hear me. They didn't respond, they didn't look at me. And so I eventually got put out into the waiting room. And when I was in the waiting room, I will say that because I never wanted an abortion, and I actually was very much pro-life and against abortion, so I was really judgmental towards other women who'd actually had an abortion. So I remember sitting in the waiting room, and I heard other girls. It was full. It was full of girls, very young girls. I was 19. I saw girls younger than me. I saw girls older than me. And I was hearing their stories. Some people were laughing. Some of them were saying, oh, we've been here, this is like my third time. It's no big deal. It's just tissue. They were just having these very nonchalant conversations. And I remember sitting there, and I felt like the world was really closing in on me. But I think to make myself feel better, I was judging them. I don't want to be here, but you do. So somehow I'm the better person, really is how I was dealing with it. Well, it became time. I don't remember how long I sat there, a few hours. And they took me back. And when they took me back, it's pretty fast. They took me back, and I told them, I really don't want an abortion. And they said, it's going to be okay. But they kind of ignored my statement.
What you were saying to them.
Yes. It's like it didn't faze them.
There's so much more to this story. We'll be right back right after this.
God values all life, even from conception. Donna Grisham and the vision of her ministry, Journeys of Choice, is to empower women through counseling, parenting classes, and by providing alternate options to choose life for themselves and their unborn child. With prayer and dependence on God, Journeys of Choice is committed to saving the lives of unborn children, while at the same time offering courage, assistance, and healing. For more information, visit journeysofchoice.org.
Welcome back. Lila, tell us some more of your story.
Well, so I think when I left off, I was in the abortion clinic, and they had given me the drug and told me just to be quiet. And I remember I started screaming out, I don't want to have an abortion, I don't want to do this. And they said just to be quiet. I remember it being really fast. And one thing I wanted to say is that I knew when that baby left me. I felt my baby's spirit leave. So after the abortion, they quickly set you up, hand you some juice or something, and wheel you into a room with all these other women.
Yeah.
And I was so ashamed. The shame, the fear, it was instant. I felt so many emotions, and plus whatever drug they gave me. And my head was swirling around, and I was just crying hysterically. And I look up, and I'm forced to be in this room at the most shameful time in my entire existence. I had been through a lot at that point, but I had never felt such shame and fear and just torment and unbelief, really, of what I did. And then they wheel you in this room with all these other people within minutes of this happening.
And you're wheeled into a room with all these different women. What was going on in the room at that time?
Well,
or there was some sort of, oh, it's nothing, it's this.
Yep.
Was there any change in the women?
I was really surprised, because in the midst of my own feelings and my fear and everything, when I looked around the room, there wasn't a dry eye in there. There wasn't a single girl in there that could look at you, and there wasn't a single one that wasn't crying. And I remember that it was everybody looked so distraught and so upset that it caught my attention, because if you remember just before, there were these same girls that they were saying it was no big deal.
Right.
And now they were crying.
That's the picture that they paint, that it's no big deal.
Yep. And at that moment, I really felt like the Lord said, never judge my people again.
Yeah.
Because his women, because they knew, they felt it. It isn't okay. It isn't just a blob of tissue. They felt something. They knew something happened too. And they were not happy about it. They were just as upset. They were, they really were, just like the rest of us as a mother, they knew something was wrong.
Yeah. So that what happened is that shame, they began to wear the shame because of, they thought in the beginning it's going to be easy because, like I said, they paint the picture of, oh, this is easy. It's going to be like I heard somebody, it's a pro-choice, I don't know, a pro-advocate for abortion, talking about, oh, it's like pulling teeth or having your wisdom teeth pulled out. And I'm thinking, you're going to compare having a baby, really, an abortion to...
Right. And the thing is they can say that, but I don't know too many people who, if they're honest, believe that. I mean, I was in so much fear. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to make it, but nothing could have prepared me of what I went through. And then that really set me into an even darker world of depression.
So that sent you down a path to destruction. So tell us, what after that, after you left the abortion clinic, What, did your boyfriend pick you up?
That's a whole other story that I don't think I'm ready to tell, but it was pretty dark.
Okay.
He wouldn't take me home. He wouldn't take me to get my prescription. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of the cramping and pain, and him and I didn't really have a relationship. You know, unfortunately, especially after him I couldn't even look at him, but he wouldn't take me home. And I never seen him after I finally did make it home. And it really left a scar in my heart. And it was so unbearable, I didn't talk about it for many years, many years.
Yeah, you kept a lot of things buried, and a lot you wouldn't even talk about anything.
I never talked to my
You ended up working for Bound for Life.
That's right.
Tell us about Bound for Life and what they do.
Yeah, so Bound for Life is really was birthed, I believe, at a Lou Engel's ministry, and in 2008, I believe, 777, he had a big called the Call.
Right.
It's prayer and fasting, right? And in that, I had heard about Bound for Life, and they really siege the abortion clinics, and it's all about prayer for the women and the people there. It's not a protest, they called it. It's a prayer meeting, and they would put the red tape over the mouth,
right.
The right life. And so it just kind of organically happened that I got into it. And the funny thing is I didn't really even know I had a story because I had suppressed my abortion so much that I really didn't consider myself, oh, I could work in the pro-life because, you know, I've had an abortion and I understand. I was still pro-life very much, but I still didn't connect to that. Right. But I started working in it, and I actually saw women, and I was able to be a voice for them. And I realized that that's what I needed, is I looked for someone who said I could do it. I needed one person, and nobody said that. Our world does not tell us that children are a blessing and a heritage of the Lord, but that is what the Lord says. But the world will, even Christians will look at you a certain way because it's just the nature of this world. It's not like, you know, the way God says things, sometimes our world doesn't really line up with that reality. Right. But he says they're a heritage and a blessing. And my oldest daughter, who I had at 16, had always been a blessing. And my children now are a blessing. And that, my son who died, he would have also been a blessing. And that's something I want other women to know, is that, you know, that you can do it. You can do it.
Well, I tell you what, look into the camera and talk to that one woman. Talk to that one woman that needs to hear what you got to say.
I do want to tell you that you can do it, that you're not alone. There's a story in the Bible that I really connect to, and that is with Hagar. Hagar was taken. She was a mistress, and she really had no choice, and she became pregnant. And there was, you know, she didn't really feel valued or anything, and she ran away. And God found her and began to talk to her. And she gave him the name of the God who sees her. And God is a God that sees you, and you can do it. And anytime you feel pushed and like there's nobody there for you, you need to know that your voice matters and how you feel matters. And just because someone doesn't see the value in your life, and just because you may be in a place that seems turmoil right now, doesn't mean you can't see the full picture, because children are a blessing. And you may feel like you don't know what you're going to do, but I guarantee if you just realize that God sees you and he can be your helper and he can turn things around for a blessing.
Yes. Well, you mentioned your son, and your son's in heaven. You know, tell us the story about getting the name of your baby, how that happened. What?
Okay. Well, let's see, 2013. I was driving on a 2-hour drive. I was going to another city. No, I was on a 4-hour drive, going to another city for a job. And I don't know why, but suddenly my abortion is right here. I feel it, it's right there, and I'm just dealing with all this pain and shame has come up, because until this point, really, I had shared my story with some women that I met working in abortion, working in the pro-life movement, when they needed to hear it, but really I still didn't share it, and I never had gotten any healing. So I began to drive on this drive, and suddenly all the pain, all the shame is right there, and it's so overbearing.
Well, there's much more to this story. We'll be right back right after this.
I invite you to visit journeysofchoice.org and get this book. You may be in a situation where you are at a crossroads between the choice of life and the choice of death. Life may have stopped for you, and you are fearful of what your future holds. Abortion, rape, adoption, and more are covered in Donna Grisham's book, Journeys of Choice. Donna shares her own story, along with 14 additional inspiring testimonies from both men and women who were at a crossroads. Each one shares the choices they made and how those choices affected their lives and the lives of others. Their words offer wisdom for making godly choices in the midst of trauma and crisis, and bring hope, healing, and supernatural redemption to anyone with a broken past. As you read these pages, you will see for yourself the truth behind choice and the effects of the choices we make. See how God wants to intervene in your situation and change the course of your life forever. Find hope and healing for those who have been faced with an unplanned pregnancy. Know that God has not left you and wants to bring hope to your hopelessness. Every testimony in this book, Journeys of Choice, will bring healing and hope to the brokenhearted, revealing what was meant for evil and harm, and show you how God can turn it around for good and blessings. This heartfelt book will inspire, motivate, encourage, and assist you on the road to recovery that will bring a wellspring of hope into your life and others. Get your copy today.
Welcome back. Lila, what were you feeling?
So I was feeling, it just comes right back, right?
Yeah.
How could I do that? How could I terminate my own child?
Right.
Knowing that I knew what was happening.
Yeah.
So anyways, it just was there, and I was crying and I didn't know what to do. And the next thing and I was talking to God and telling him I was sorry. And the next thing you know, I had this random thought about a woman's name I had heard at some ministry thing I was at. And suddenly the name Kat Kerr came to my mind. And I was actually so upset I pulled over because I could not drive. And because it was so random, I just was like, why do I remember her name? And I typed it in, and her book, Revealing Heaven, came on audio, so I started to listen to it. And if you guys have ever read that, it's talking about heaven, and it was such a fabulous book because when I grew up, I didn't really hear a lot about heaven, so it was very interesting to me. And so that kind of took my mind off things, and I was just listening to this stuff about heaven. When I arrived to my hotel, I got my things, I went back in, and suddenly, bam, all this emotion is back. Mm-hmm. And I had these questions in my heart about my baby and to God. And so I wrote them down. I don't remember them now, but I wrote them down, and I decided to finish listening to the book. So I turned it on, and the very next chapter was on miscarried babies and babies that had been aborted in heaven. Mm-hmm. And when she began to talk, she answered all three of the questions for me that I had written down. Mm-hmm. And one thing she said is you should name your baby.
Right.
Well, this sent me into a panic. I began to get upset again, and I was crying, and I said, I can't do it. How could I? I don't deserve to be the one to give him a name because I'm the reason he's not here.
Right.
And I heard the Holy Spirit said, you've already given him a name. And I said, what? No, I didn't. Well, when I had my second son, his name was going to be Joshua Julian. Mm-hmm. Had it picked out for months, me and his father. But the morning he was born, I kept thinking, I should really give him 4 names. I will call him Joshua Michael Julian. Mm-hmm. And it just came to me. Well, I shared it with my husband, and he was like, no, we've had this planned. His name is Joshua Julian. But I felt so strongly about it. I wrote it on his birth certificate anyway, mm-hmm. and his name is Joshua Michael Julian. Mm-hmm. And right there at that moment, the Holy Spirit said, you already named him. Why do you think Joshua has that third name?
Mm-hmm. So you named the baby in heaven.
I named him Michael.
Michael.
I knew at that moment, it's like with Isaac, it's like the Lord provided a sacrifice. He knew I wouldn't be able to do it, and he helped me name him beforehand.
He had already helped you name. Well, Lila, you know, your story is so amazing and just, I mean, so touching. But to go through, you know, having your child and then, you know, really, actually, honestly, to me, the time going through the abortion, and you really felt like you were forced, you know, and I think there's so many women out there that are coerced, young girls that are really coerced because they're told there's no other way, there's no other hope. And you know, our stories are here to give the women hope.
That's right.
You know, and I just want to speak to those that are viewing right now. You may be a young woman that is at the place of the decision. You may be a woman that has already been through, and you've felt the trauma that Lila has felt. You felt like feeling like you have been just forced. You know, in your mind, you may not have said it out loud with your mouth, because sometimes our voices are constricted.
That's right.
And you know, I know that there are times and I can even remember my second abortion. You know, I can remember going through the door, and my first thought was, I can't do this again. And even I heard a voice that said, run. And I froze. I felt like somebody had grabbed me around the neck and just held like tightened, and I couldn't talk. And so after that, on the table, when they turned the machine on, I actually screamed, stop, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. And the man kept saying, turn it off. And it was done. And there was nothing I could do. So there's, you know, you may be that young woman that either you went through that, you went through the pain of it and the hurt of it, and but God wants to, you know, redeem it. He wants to erase your past, because we're not. Our past doesn't define our future.
That's right.
My past doesn't define my future. Lila's past doesn't define her future, but you know, what we do with the story that's been given to us, what the things that we've been through, that is what defines, you know, Jesus, the one in us, Christ in me, the hope of glory.
That's right.
is what defines me. And I just want to say that, number one, wherever you're at, just release it to Him. Give it to Him. And He'll take it from you. He'll take you down a road to healing. And just, Lila, thank you for being with me today. And thank you for joining us today. Visit my website, journeysofchoice.org. I would love to hear from you. See you next week on The Real Pro Choice.